Humanity has always looked skyward for its true path. We stood at the edge of destruction and would have fallen, if not for the might of the God Emperor and his angels of death.
Salut à tous, c'est à Vancouver, et plus particulièrement dans les locaux de Relic Entertainment que nous nous trouvons aujourd'hui. Ces mêmes développeurs que vous connaissez certainement pour avoir précédemment mis au monde les fameux jeux de stratégie de la série Dawn of War dans l'univers de Warhammer 40.000. Mais aujourd'hui, c'est leur prochain jeu d'action en vue à la troisième personne qui est à l'honneur. Armure rutilante, grosse pétoire et épée tronçonneuse, autant vous dire que les amateurs de tricot n'y trouveront pas leur compte. Mais à quoi doit-on s'attendre au juste avec ce Space Marine?
Space Marine is a third-person shooter with strong melee components set in the Warhammer 40.000 world. You play the quintessential Space Marine hero. We feel like we have the original Space Marine. Yes, it's a blockbuster action game. It's our completely new interpretation of the 40K IP, Warhammer 40.000 IP, in video game form. Players can expect to have, a really high-impact blockbuster action experience. The Warhammer 40.000 IP is extremely rich. There's tons of really interesting fiction, lots of alien races. The human heroes, the Space Marines, are really these 7 foot tall, 1,000-pound kind of towering forces on the battlefield, and you get to be one of those guys, the defenders of humanity against all the alien horde. We feel like what makes Space Marine feel magical and different from our competition is our seamless blend of shooter, like really satisfying third-person shooter action with a very strong melee component. And the combination of those two elements creates for an amazingly visceral and satisfying combat experience that you won't get in any other game. High level, the setting essentially is there's a forge world, which is a planet-sized factory that's dedicated to building war machines, essentially tanks and weapons. It's really critical to the war effort for the Imperium. It's kind of what keeps them going. It's the heartbeat of that war machine. And it's just been invaded by a massive orc army led by a war boss. They've crashed asteroids on the planet with millions of orcs, and they're kind of overrunning the planet. Within the first couple days afterwards, they've essentially taken control. They've overrun the Imperial Guard regiments and the planetary defense forces that are there. And the Imperial Navy is mustering a liberation fleet, a huge liberation fleet, but because the Imperium is quite sort of bureaucracy heavy, these things take a long time. And so in the meantime, to buy some time for the fleet to arrive, they're sending in the Ultramarines. And you get to be an Ultramarine captain, a hero that drops onto the planet to deal with the orc threat.
Forged in blood, tempered in battle. We are the living weapons of humanity. The Space Marines.
We've got 15 weapons pulled out of the 40K IP. We've got the bolter. We have exotic weapons as well. You saw some examples of those today. The heavy bolter, las cannon, missile launchers, thunder hammer. You have your chainsword. We've got all kinds of weapons, and as you saw some examples today, really devastating. So you see every time you pull the trigger and you shoot something dies or explodes, or maybe dies and explodes. There's just a lot of stuff happening on the screen. It's extremely intense and very satisfying, and we really feel like we're delivering on that strong core fantasy of being the Space Marine, walking onto the battlefield, surrounded by enemies and just cutting through them right and left. So we have a progression system in Space Marine, and it's quite an accessible, satisfying progression. Essentially, every weapon has an upgrade path, and it's you grow by doing. So every time you use a weapon to kill someone, the weapon becomes a little bit stronger. And then we have sort of thresholds where they upgrade to more powerful versions, and with lots of other kind of explosive modifications and things like that. So it just makes the core combat even more satisfying. You will have opportunities throughout the campaign to sort of rearm yourself. The exotic weapons, because they're so powerful and specific, we've built areas of the campaign around using those weapons. So whenever you pick up an exotic weapon, and these are things like, a las cannon turret that might be on a vehicle that you go up to and you tear it off, and then you use it against your enemies. They're very sort of satisfying showcase combat scenarios that really stand out from the rest of the game. We also have, you saw some examples of our action set pieces. So this is, these are really sort of high action blockbuster experiences that we're delivering to the player that are often introducing sort of unconventional gameplay aspects. So things that are a bit different from the core of shooting and melee that kind of mix things up for the player, put them in precarious situations where we get to see really how the Space Marine can dominate all these different situations. So we're really excited about those.
They want to steal this world. Let them try.